The sun hung low over the Badlands, painting the dried grass in shades of amber and rust. A hot wind swept across the prairie, carrying dust and the scent of sage, while purple-tinged mountains rose like ancient sentinels against the crimson sky. This was Wyoming territory in 1863, where civilization ended and survival began. Clara Morrison stood at the window of her small cabin on the outskirts of Copper Ridge, watching the sunset transform the landscape into something both beautiful and threatening. At 24, she was already a widow. Her husband Samuel killed 2 winters past by claim jumpers who'd wanted their modest homestead. The town had done nothing then, said it was the risk of frontier life. Now she scraped by taking in washing and mending, keeping to herself in a place where a woman alone was viewed with suspicion. The mining town of Copper Ridge squatted like a festering wound on the prairie, its hastily built structures leaning against each other for support. Saloons outnumbered churches 5 to 1, and justice came from the barrel of a gun more often than from any law book. The recent silver strike had brought a flood of prospectors, drifters, and opportunists, turning what had been a quiet trading post into a powder keg of greed and paranoia. That morning, 3 horses had gone missing from Jake Thornton's corral. By noon, the whole town buzzed with accusations. Horse theft was a hanging offense in the territories. A man without a horse might as well be dead in this unforgiving land. Thornton, a bull of a man who ran the largest saloon, had worked the miners into a frenzy with free whiskey and talk of swift justice. Clara first sensed trouble when Martha Henley stopped accepting her washing. Then the grocer, Old Pete, suddenly had no flour to sell her. By afternoon, she noticed men gathering in small groups, their eyes following her movements, conversations dying when she passed. "You harboring anyone out at that cabin of yours? Widow Morrison?" The voice belonged to Silas Crawford, self-appointed leader of what passed for law in Copper Ridge. He blocked her path as she tried to leave the general store, his breath sour with tobacco and rot-gut whiskey. "I live alone. Mr. Crawford, you know that." "Do I? Seems mighty strange. Them horses disappearing and you being the only one lives out near the canyon trail." His small eyes glinted with malice. "Fellow could hide a whole remuda in them rocks, with the right help." Clara lifted her chin, though fear coiled in her stomach. "I've stolen nothing. I've helped no one steal. I barely have enough to feed myself, let alone spare food for thieves." "That's what they all say." Crawford spat a stream of tobacco juice that splattered near her worn boots. "Town council's meeting tonight. You'd best hope someone vouches for your character." But Clara had no one to vouch for her. She was an outsider, an Eastern woman who'd followed her husband's dreams west only to bury him in foreign soil. She kept to herself, refused the advances of drunk miners, and attended no church socials. In a town hungry for someone to blame, she was perfect. The council met in Thornton's saloon, the air thick with smoke and heated voices. Clara wasn't permitted inside. Women weren't unless they worked there, but she could hear the shouting through the thin walls. She stood in the dusty street, hands clenched in her patched skirts, as her fate was decided by men who'd never spoken a kind word to her. "She's got that cabin out by Devil's Canyon," someone shouted. "Perfect spot for rustlers to rest up. Seen her talking to that Mexican trader last month," another voice added. "Probably in on it together. Her husband was a horse thief too, I heard tell," someone lied. "Apple don't fall far from the tree." The voices rose and fell like waves, each accusation building on the last. Truth twisted into rope that would hang her. Clara wanted to scream, to burst through those doors and demand they look her in the eye while they condemned her. But she knew it would only make things worse. These men didn't want justice. They wanted blood, someone to pay for their losses and fears. As the moon rose over Copper Ridge, the saloon doors burst open. Men poured out, their face flushed with righteous anger and whiskey courage. Crawford led them, a coiled whip in his meaty fist. "Clara Morrison," he announced to the gathering crowd, "the council has found you guilty of aiding horse thieves. Since we're civilized folk, we won't hang a woman, but you'll take 20 lashes as warning. Then you got till sunrise to leave Copper Ridge forever. Clara's knees nearly buckled. 20 lashes could kill a woman. I demand a proper trial. This isn't justice. Justice? Thornton pushed forward, his face twisted with rage. Those were prime horses, worth $200 each. You want justice? You should have thought of that before you took up with thieves. Rough hands seized her arms. Clara fought, but she was one woman against a mob. They dragged her to the center of the dusty square where a post stood. The same post where they'd whipped a Chinese laborer to death the previous summer. Someone tore the back of her dress open, exposing her to the cool night air and the hungry eyes of the crowd. Please, she gasped, pride warring with desperation. I've done nothing wrong. You know me. I'm Samuel Morrison's widow. I've lived here peacefully. Peacefully plotting with rustlers, someone shouted, and the crowd roared approval. They bound her hands to the post, the rough wood scraping her cheek. Clara heard the whip whistle through the air before fire exploded across her back. She bit down on her scream, determined not to give them the satisfaction. But as the second and third blows fell, tearing through fabric and flesh, her resolve crumbled. The crowd counted each stroke with savage glee. 4, 5, 6. Blood ran down her back, soaking into the dust. The world narrowed to the rhythm of pain and the taste of copper in her mouth. Through tears she refused to shed. Clara saw faces she recognized. The banker who'd foreclosed on widows. The merchant who cheated on weights. The deputy who took bribes. All of them watching her suffering with satisfaction, as if her pain could wash away their own sins. 15, 16. Darkness crept at the edges of her vision. Her legs gave out, held up only by the ropes binding her wrists. Still the whip fell. Crawford putting his full strength behind each blow. It was then, as Clara hung barely conscious and the crowd bayed for her complete collapse, that a figure moved at the edge of the square, tall and silent as a shadow. He stood apart from the townspeople, his dark eyes taking in the scene with an expression that might have been carved from stone. The setting sun caught the eagle feathers in his long black hair, the beaded patterns on his buckskin shirt marking him as Lakota, one of the hostiles the town usually shot on sight. But tonight, drunk on bloodlust and focused on their victim. No one noticed the warrior who watched their savagery with eyes that had seen too much suffering already. No one saw him step forward as Clara finally went limp, her body unable to endure anymore. 20! The crowd roared in triumph. They lashed her until she collapsed, someone said with satisfaction. That'll teach her and any other rustler lovers what happens in Copper Ridge. As the mob celebrated their version of justice, the Lakota hunter moved closer, his hand moving to the knife at his belt. The night wind picked up, swirling dust around the square like spirits of the dead. And somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, a sound that made even the drunk miners shiver. Justice had died in Copper Ridge that night, but something else was about to be born in its place, something the town would speak of in whispers for years to come, when they remembered the night the Lakota hunter defied everything to carry away the broken woman they'd tried to destroy. The whip cracked through the air like thunder, its leather tongue biting deep into Clara's exposed back. The sound echoed off the wooden buildings, mixing with the jeers of the crowd and the whistle of the evening wind. Dust swirled up from the square, coating everything in a fine layer of grit that mixed with the scent of blood and sweat. That's 5, someone shouted, though Clara had already lost count. Each strike sent fresh fire racing across her skin, the pain so intense it stole her breath. She pressed her forehead against the rough post, splinters digging into her skin as she fought to remain standing. Crawford wielded the whip with practiced cruelty, pausing between strikes to let the anticipation build. The crowd pressed closer, their faces twisted with savage satisfaction. Women pulled their children away, but the men stayed, some passing bottles of whiskey, others placing bets on how many lashes she could take before losing consciousness. 6, 7! Clara's dress hung in tatters, the fabric dark with blood. She bit down hard on her lip, tasting copper, refusing to give them the satisfaction of her screams. but small sounds escaped, gasps and whimpers that seemed to encourage Crawford to strike harder. The wind picked up, sending dust devils spinning through the square. It rattled the shutters and made the oil lamps flicker, casting dancing shadows that made the scene even more nightmarish. The sound was mournful, almost like weeping, as if the very air grieved for what was happening. "Look at her shake," Thornton called out, taking a swig from his flask. "Not so proud now, are you, woman?" 8, 9, 10. Clara's knees buckled, but the ropes binding her wrists to the post kept her upright. Her back was a map of agony, each new strike crossing old wounds, splitting skin already torn. Blood ran in rivulets down her sides, soaking into her corset, dripping onto the dusty ground where it mixed with the dirt to form dark mud. Through the haze of pain, she found herself whispering, not pleas for mercy, for she knew none would come, but fragments of prayer and memory. "Samuel," she breathed, seeing her husband's face. "I'm sorry, so sorry." "What's that, the thief lovers praying?" someone mocked. "Bit late for that. 11, 12. The whip wrapped around her ribs this time, the tip catching her side. Clara couldn't hold back the cry that tore from her throat. The crowd cheered as if at a boxing match, their bloodlust growing with each sign of her weakening. In the shadow between buildings, Chaska stood perfectly still, every muscle tense. He had come to town to trade furs, moving carefully through the back alleys to avoid confrontation. The Lakota were not welcome in Copper Ridge unless they had something the white men wanted. But the sounds of the crowd had drawn him, and what he saw made his jaw clench with barely controlled rage. He knew this dance of cruelty, had seen it performed on his own people countless times, the way they made a spectacle of suffering, turned pain into entertainment. His hand moved unconsciously to the scar on his chest, a souvenir from a cavalry saber when his village had been raided 3 winters past. 13, 14. Clara was barely conscious now, hanging limp from her bonds. Her lips moved in what might have been prayer or delirium. "Justice," she mumbled, the word almost lost in the wind. "Please, justice." "She wants justice," Crawford mocked, raising the whip high. "This is frontier justice, woman!" The lash came down with particular viciousness. Clara's body jerked, but no sound came. She had passed beyond screaming, beyond even whimpering. Her head lolled forward, hair hanging in sweat-soaked strands. 15, 16! Blood pooled at the base of the post. Some of the crowd began to look uncomfortable, the fun draining away as they realized she might actually die. But mob mentality held them in place, and no one dared speak against what they'd all agreed to. Chaska's dark eyes tracked every face in the crowd, memorizing them. He saw the banker, Monroe, who'd been so quick to foreclose on Lakota-friendly homesteaders. The shopkeeper, Watson, who charged Indians double and sold them spoiled goods. Deputy Harris, who'd shot Chaska's cousin for the crime of watering his horse at the town trough. 17, 18! Clara went completely limp, held up only by the ropes. Her breathing was shallow, barely visible. Still Crawford continued, lost in his own power, the whip singing its terrible song. From where he stood, Chaska could see her face in profile, pale as death, streaked with tears and dirt, but somehow still defiant even in unconsciousness. She reminded him of his sister, who'd faced the soldiers with her chin high even as they burned their village. The same stubborn courage, the same refusal to break completely. 19. "She's had enough. Crawford!" Someone finally called out. Doc Murphy, pushing through the crowd. "You'll kill her!" Council voted 20 lashes. Crawford replied, breathing hard from exertion. "She gets 20. He raised the whip one final time, putting all his strength behind it. The crack echoed like a gunshot. Clara's body didn't even twitch. 20. They lashed her until she collapsed. The crowd began to disperse. The show over. Some looked satisfied, others vaguely ashamed now that the bloodlust had passed. Crawford coiled his whip, spat on the ground near Clara's feet, and headed back to the saloon. "Cut her down and dump her outside town limits," he ordered Harris. "If she lives, She better not show her face here again. But Harris was already 3 drinks in and in no hurry to deal with a bloody woman. "After I finish my hand," he said, following the others into the saloon. "She ain't going nowhere." Within minutes, the square was empty except for Clara's unconscious form tied to the post. The wind howled through the abandoned space, making her hair flutter like a tattered flag. Blood had soaked through what remained of her dress, painting dark patterns on the ground. Chaska emerged from the shadows, moving with the fluid grace of a hunter. He crossed the square quickly but cautiously, every sense alert for danger. Up close, the damage was even worse than he'd thought. The whip had flayed her back open, leaving wounds that would scar when they healed. He cut the ropes with his hunting knife, catching her as she fell. She weighed almost nothing, bird bones and blood. Her head lolled against his chest, and he could feel the shallow flutter of her breathing. For a moment, Chaska hesitated. Taking her meant defying not just the white man's law, but his own people's rules about avoiding entanglement with the colonizers. His uncle would rage. The council would call him a fool. But looking down at her broken form, remembering his sister's face, he knew he had no choice. "She does not belong to your cruelty," he said to the empty square, though whether he meant the town or the world itself, even he wasn't sure. A door creaked open. Chaska moved swiftly, lifting Clara in his arms. She made a small sound of pain but didn't wake. He could hear voices approaching, probably someone coming to see if the woman was dead yet. The warrior melted back into the shadows, carrying his burden carefully. Behind him, shouts erupted as they discovered the empty post, the cut ropes, the blood trail that ended at the edge of the square. "The woman's gone! Someone took her!" Search the town. She couldn't have gotten far. But Chaska was already beyond their reach, moving through the darkness with the sureness of one who had learned to be invisible in a world that wanted him dead. The woman in his arms drew a shuddering breath, and he adjusted his grip, trying not to aggravate her wounds. The night wind followed them, carrying the sounds of pursuit and fury. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled, promising a storm. But for now, there was only the darkness, the weight of an unconscious woman, and a choice that would change everything. They had lashed her until she collapsed, but she had not died. And now, carried by unlikely hands toward an uncertain future. Clara Morrison's story was far from over. The memories came unbidden as Chaska carried the unconscious woman through the darkness. Each step away from Copper Ridge stirred echoes of another night. 3 winters passed, when flames had painted the sky orange and the screams of his people had filled the air. The 7th Cavalry had come at dawn, claiming the band had been raiding settlements. It was a lie. They'd been camped peacefully for the winter hunt, but truth meant nothing to men hungry for glory and land. His sister Winona had stood in the doorway of their teepee, trying to shield the children. The soldier's bullet had taken her in the chest, and she'd fallen backward, her eyes finding Chaska's across the chaos. Even dying, she'd mouthed a single word: "Run!" He had run, had survived, had carried that guilt like stones in his chest ever since. Now, feeling the weight of this broken white woman in his arms, Chaska wondered if the spirits were testing him. Was this redemption or merely another path to sorrow? The wind shifted, bringing the scent of pursuit. Dogs barking, horses neighing, men shouting. They'd discovered her absence quickly. Chaska quickened his pace, his moccasins silent on the rocky ground. He knew every trail, every hiding spot in these badlands. The whites might own the towns, but the night and the wild places still belonged to those who knew how to read them. Clara stirred, a small moan escaping her lips. Her eyelids fluttered, and for a moment, Chaska saw the glint of green eyes in the moonlight before they closed again. He felt her tense, then go limp, whether from pain or fear. He couldn't tell. 2 miles from town, he reached the grove of cottonwoods where he'd hidden his horse. The bay mare whickered softly in greeting, ears pricked forward. Chaska laid Clara carefully on the ground, pulling off his buckskin shirt to cushion her. In the moonlight, her injuries looked even worse, deep welts crisscrossing her back, some still seeping blood. He should leave her here. Someone would find her by morning. Take her to safety. His part was done. He'd saved her from bleeding out tied to that post. The debt to his conscience was paid. But even as he thought it, Chaska knew it for a lie. They wouldn't take her to safety. They'd drag her back for more punishment, or leave her to die of exposure, claiming she'd escaped justice. He'd seen how the whites treated their own when they stepped outside the narrow boundaries of acceptable behavior. Working quickly, he fashioned a travois from saplings in his blanket. Every moment of delay increased the danger, but he couldn't simply throw her over the horse like a sack of grain, not with those wounds. As he lifted her onto the makeshift carrier, Clara's eyes opened fully. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other. The Lakota hunter and the broken white woman. He expected screaming, terror at finding herself in the hands of a savage. Instead, she blinked slowly, as if trying to focus. "You're Indian," she whispered, her voice raw. "Lakota," he corrected automatically, then wondered why it mattered. Her brow furrowed. But why? It was such a simple question. Yet Chaska found he had no simple answer. Why indeed? He secured the travois to his horse, movements efficient despite the turmoil in his chest. "Because someone should," he finally said. "Because cruelty should not go unanswered." Clara's eyes drifted closed again, but not before he saw something unexpected in them, not fear, but a weary understanding. Perhaps she, too, knew what it was to see cruelty winning, justice perverted into violence. He led the horse into the deeper wilderness, choosing paths that would confuse tracking dogs and discourage pursuit. Behind them, Copper Ridge blazed with torches as search parties formed. The sound carried on the wind, baying hounds, cursing men, the promise of violence. An hour into their flight, the storm that had been threatening finally broke. Rain fell in sheets, turning the dust to mud, washing away their tracks but also making travel treacherous. Chaska pulled Clara under an overhanging rock shelf, checking her wounds by touch in the darkness. She was burning with fever, her skin hot despite the cold rain. He knew the signs, infection setting in already. Without proper treatment, she wouldn't last 2 days, but taking her to his band was impossible. Even if he could convince them to help a white woman, it would bring the army down on them. His people had suffered enough for his choices. "Water," Clara mumbled, more unconscious than awake. Chaska held his water pouch to her lips, supporting her head. She drank greedily, then coughed, the movement making her cry out as it pulled at her wounds. "Who are you?" she asked when the pain subsided, her voice stronger than he expected. "Chaska, in your language, it means firstborn son. I'm Clara." A ghost of bitter humor crossed her face. "It means bright. Funny, isn't it? Nothing bright about me now." Thunder crashed overhead, and in the brief illumination of lightning, Chaska saw tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. Not from pain, he realized, but from something deeper, the grief of losing everything, even hope. "Why did they beat you?" he asked, though he suspected he knew. The whites always needed someone to blame, someone weaker to carry their sins. "Horses were stolen. I lived alone, near the canyon. That was enough to make me guilty." She tried to laugh, but it came out as a sob. "They killed my husband 2 years ago. Did nothing, but horses matter." The bitterness in her voice matched his own. Yes, property mattered more than lives in the white man's world. He'd learned that lesson well. "You must have family," Chaska said. "Somewhere to go. Back east, Boston. But I can't. I won't go back. Not like this. Not defeated." Despite everything, defiance flickered in her eyes. "I came here with Samuel to build something. I won't let them drive me away." Brave words. But Chaska heard the desperation beneath them. She had nowhere to go, no one to help her. Just like Winona, standing in that doorway, refusing to yield even as death came for her. "She does not belong to your cruelty," he murmured, repeating the words he'd spoken in the square. Clara studied him in the darkness. "What?" "Something I said when I took you. The cruelty of the world should not win, not always." But it does, she whispered. It always does. Not tonight, Chaska said firmly. Tonight, you live. Tomorrow, he shrugged. Tomorrow we see. The rain began to slacken, and he knew they needed to move. Every minute in one place increased the risk of discovery. But as he helped Clara back onto the travois, he made a decision that would have horrified his uncle, his cousins, anyone with sense. There is a place, he said slowly. A hidden valley, 2 days north. An old woman lives there, Owl Woman. We call her. She is between worlds, cast out by her own people for taking a white husband years ago, rejected by his people when he died. She knows healing, and she fears neither red nor white because both have already done their worst to her. Clara gripped his hand with surprising strength. Why would you take me there? Risk yourself for a stranger? An enemy? Chaska looked down at their joined hands, his brown, hers pale, both stained with blood and rain. He thought of Winona, of all the small cruelties that built into great horrors, of the cycle of vengeance that consumed both their peoples. Because someone must break the wheel, he said. Someone must choose differently. Tonight, that someone is me. He lifted her onto the horse, noting how she bit back cries of pain. The search parties were spreading out, their torches visible through the trees. Time was running short. They'll come after you, Clara warned. Your people won't understand. Mine will want you dead. They already do. Chaska said simply, I am already outside the circle for trading with whites. For speaking against war. This merely adds another mark to my name. As they moved deeper into the wilderness, Clara drifting in and out of consciousness. Chaska wondered if he was saving her or dooming them both, but every time doubt crept in, he remembered Winona's last word. Run. Perhaps she hadn't meant run away. Perhaps she'd meant run toward a different future, toward the possibility of breaking the endless cycle of blood for blood. The night swallowed them, and behind them, Copper Ridge seethed with rage. They would talk of this for years, the night the Indian stole their justice, the night he carried away the woman they'd broken. But Chaska cared nothing for their stories. He had chosen, and in choosing, had perhaps found a fragment of the redemption he'd thought forever lost. The prairie grass whispered secrets in the pre-dawn darkness as Chaska guided his horse through the swaying sea of golden stems. They had traveled through the night, putting distance between themselves and the vengeful town. But Clara's condition worsened with each passing hour. Her fever burned hotter than the rising sun, and delirious words tumbled from her lips, fragments of memory and pain. Samuel, no, don't go. The claim jumpers. Chaska had stopped twice to check her wounds, his jaw tightening at what he saw. The lashes had been brutal enough, but lying on the travois, despite his attempts at cushioning, had aggravated them further. Some had reopened, seeping through the makeshift bandages he'd torn from his own shirt. As the first light of dawn painted the eastern sky in shades of rose and gold, he found what he'd been seeking, a sheltered grove beside a small stream, surrounded by willow and cottonwood. The water ran clear and cold from the mountains, and the overhanging branches would hide them from any eyes searching from a distance. He lifted Clara from the travois with infinite care, but still she cried out, the sound piercing the morning stillness. Her eyes opened, unfocused and glassy with fever. Where are we? Safe, for now, Chaska said, laying her on her side on a bed of soft grass. I need to tend your wounds. Clara's laugh was hollow. Tend them? Just let me die. It would be easier. No. The word came out harsher than he intended. Chaska softened his tone. Death is always easy. Living takes courage. He built a small fire, keeping it smokeless with dry wood, and set water to heat in his cooking pot from his parfleche bag. He withdrew precious items, dried herbs his grandmother had taught him to use, clean cloth traded from a Mexican merchant, a small pot of bear grease mixed with healing plants. I need to clean the wounds, he warned. It will hurt. Clara nodded, gripping handfuls of grass. Do what you must. The next hour tested them both. Chaska worked with gentle efficiency, cleaning each lash mark with warm water infused with willow bark. Clara bit down on a piece of leather to muffle her cries, her body rigid with pain. Several times she nearly fainted, and Chaska had to stop, allowing her to recover before continuing. As he worked, he found himself speaking, partly to distract her, partly because the silence felt too heavy. "My grandmother was a healer," he said, crushing dried yarrow leaves into a paste. "She could cure almost anything with plants and prayer. She tried to teach me, but I was young, more interested in hunting than herbs." "Did she?" Clara gasped as he applied the poultice. "Did she teach you about white people's wounds?" A bitter smile crossed Chaska's face. "Pain is pain. Blood is blood. The body doesn't care about the color of skin around it." When he finished, Clara lay exhausted, her back covered in herbal poultices and clean bandages. Chaska offered her water mixed with ground willow bark for the pain and fever. She drank without complaint, though he saw her nose wrinkle at the bitter taste. "Rest now," he said. "Sleep is the best medicine." But Clara's eyes remained open, studying him with disconcerting intensity. "You haven't slept at all. I will keep watch. For my people or yours?" "Both," he admitted. "Neither will understand. Both will want blood." Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Tell me about your grandmother. Please, I need to think about something besides." Chaska understood. He settled against a tree, rifle across his knees, and began to speak. She was called Winyan Wakan, Holy Woman, not because she was particularly religious, but because she could see things others couldn't. Sickness, yes, but also the shadows in people's hearts. She said healing the body was simple compared to healing the spirit. As the sun climbed higher, he told stories of his childhood, hunting with his father, racing horses with his cousins, the ceremonies that marked the turning of seasons. Clara listened with closed eyes, occasionally asking questions that showed she was truly interested, not merely being polite. "Your sister," she said suddenly. "You mentioned her last night. Winona?" Chaska's hand stilled on his rifle. "Yes." "She died?" "3 winters ago, when the soldiers came." Clara opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. "I'm sorry. I know it doesn't mean much, coming from me, but I am sorry." "You didn't fire the bullet." "No, but my people did. Just as they beat me last night, just as they killed my Samuel." Her voice turned thoughtful. "Strange, isn't it? How my people can mean so many things. The ones who hurt us, the ones we protect, the ones we run from." Chaska considered this. "Perhaps that is why I helped you, because my people and your people, these are just words. In the end, there is only people." The sound of horses made them both freeze. Chaska was on his feet instantly. Rifle ready. Through the trees, he glimpsed riders, 5 men, moving slowly, studying the ground. "Trackers," he breathed. "They found our trail." Clara struggled to sit up, face pale with fear and pain. "Give me a weapon. You can barely move. I can shoot. Samuel taught me." Her green eyes blazed with determination. "I won't be taken back. I won't." Chaska made a quick decision. He pulled his revolver from his belt, checked the loads, and placed it in her hands. "Only if they find us. Only if there's no choice." The riders were coming closer. Chaska could hear their voices now, carried on the morning wind. "Tracks lead this way, but the rain washed most out. That savage can't have gotten far with a wounded woman." "Thornton's offering $50 for the Indian's scalp, 20 for the woman brought back alive." Chaska's mind raced. Fighting meant death, 5 against 1, with Clara unable to run. "But perhaps—" "Stay here," he whispered. "No matter what you hear, don't move, don't make a sound." Before Clara could protest, he melted into the brush. Years of hunting, of moving unseen through hostile territory, served him now. He circled wide, coming up behind the search party. The men had stopped at the stream, watering their horses. Chaska recognized 2 of them, Harris, the corrupt deputy, and a miner named Welch, who was known for his cruelty to Chinese workers. "We should head back," one of them was saying. "That Indian knows this country. We'll never find him." "Crawford won't like it," Harris replied. "He wants that woman bad, says it's about justice, but I think he's sweet on her. Wants to teach her proper respect." The others laughed coarsely, and Chaska's hands tightened on his rifle. But shooting would bring more men, and Clara couldn't travel fast enough to escape. Instead, he picked up a stone and threw it far to the east, where it clattered against rocks. The horses' heads came up, ears pricked. What was that? Could be them. Come on. The riders spurred their horses toward the false sound. Chaska threw another stone, farther away, leading them from the grove. He continued this game for nearly an hour, pulling the search party miles from where Clara hid. When he finally returned, the sun was high and hot. Clara had managed to drag herself to the stream's edge, where she'd been bathing her face and arms. The revolver lay within easy reach. "They're gone," Chaska said. "But they'll be back. We need to move." Clara nodded, then swayed. Chaska caught her before she fell. "I'm fine," she insisted, though her skin burned with fever and her eyes were too bright. Just give me a moment." Chaska knew they didn't have moments to spare, but he also knew pushing her too hard would kill her as surely as any bullet. He refilled the water pouches, packed their few supplies, and fashioned a better cushion for the travois. As he lifted her onto it, Clara caught his hand. "That medicine your grandmother taught you, it's helping. The pain is manageable." It was a lie. He could see the agony in every line of her body, but the fact that she would lie to reassure him, that she thought of his feelings even in her suffering, moved something in his chest. "Owl woman will have better medicine," he promised. "We'll reach her by tomorrow night." "If we live that long," Clara said, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We will," Chaska said firmly. "I didn't defy my clan and yours just to let you die on the prairie." As they set out again, the sun brutal overhead and danger on every side, Clara spoke so softly he almost missed it. "Thank you for the stories, for seeing me as more than just another white woman, for choosing differently." Chaska said nothing, but he touched her hand briefly, a promise without words. They would survive this. They would reach safety, and perhaps, in saving each other, they might save something larger than themselves. The prairie stretched endlessly before them, golden and dangerous and full of possibility. Behind them, the search continued, men driven by greed and wounded pride. But for now, in this moment, there was only the rhythm of the horses' hooves, the whisper of grass, and two people bound by suffering and hope, carrying each other toward an uncertain dawn. Dawn broke over the Badlands like spilled blood across canvas, painting the rocky ridges in shades of crimson and gold. Chaska had not slept, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon for signs of pursuit. Below them, in the valley they just crossed, he could see the dust clouds, multiple groups of riders converging on their trail. "They're getting closer," Clara observed, her voice stronger than it had been the night before. The fever had broken near midnight, leaving her weak but lucid. She sat propped against a boulder, Chaska's rifle across her lap while he studied the terrain ahead. "They know we're heading north," he said. "They'll try to cut us off at Pine Ridge Canyon." Clara followed his gaze to the narrow passage between towering cliffs. "Is there another way?" "Yes, but it means crossing the river during spring melt." He turned to study her, assessing. The herbal treatments had helped, but she was still far from healed. "Can you swim?" "I grew up in Boston. We had books, not rivers." Despite the gravity of their situation, a wry smile touched her lips. "But I suppose I'll learn quickly enough." Chaska allowed himself a small smile in return. Her spirit remained unbroken. Even after everything, it reminded him of prairie grass, beaten down by storms but always rising again. They descended toward the river as the sun climbed higher, the sound of rushing water growing louder with each mile. When they finally reached it, Clara's face paled. The spring melt had turned what was usually a manageable stream into a torrent of icy brown water, carrying debris from the mountains. "That's not a river," she said. "That's liquid death. The horses know how to swim." Chaska assured her, though privately he shared her concern. "We'll make it." Behind them, a gunshot cracked across the morning air. Then another. The trackers had found their trail down from the ridge. "No time for fear," Chaska said, already leading his horse toward the water. "Hold tight to the travois. Whatever happens, don't let go." Clara gripped the poles until her knuckles went white. "If I drown, tell them I died free. Not beaten, not broken. Free!" "You won't drown," Chaska said firmly. "I won't allow it." The horse balked at the water's edge, but Chaska spoke to it in Lakota, his voice calm and reassuring. Finally, the animal stepped in, immediately struggling against the current. Cold water rushed over the travois, soaking Clara instantly. She gasped, but held on. Halfway across, disaster struck. A log, carried by the current, slammed into the horse's side. The animal stumbled, and the travois broke free. Clara plunged into the icy water, the current immediately seizing her. Without hesitation, Chaska dove from his horse. The cold hit like a physical blow, stealing his breath, but he struck out toward where Clara had disappeared. Once, twice, he dove beneath the churning surface, lungs burning. On the third attempt, his hand caught fabric. He hauled Clara up, her face blue with cold, and struck out for the far shore. The current fought them, trying to drag them under. But Chaska had grown up swimming in mountain streams. He knew how to work with the water instead of against it. They washed up on a gravel bar a quarter-mile downstream, both gasping and shivering. Clara coughed up water, her whole body shaking. Can't feel my fingers," she stammered through chattering teeth. Chaska pulled her higher onto the bank, then whistled sharply. His horse, well trained, had made it across and came trotting back along the shore, but precious supplies were gone. Food, medicine, even his rifle lost to the river. More gunshots. Closer now. Chaska could see riders on the far bank, but none seemed eager to brave the crossing. "Cowards!" Clara spat, though the effect was somewhat ruined by her violent shivering. Chaska helped her onto the horse, then swung up behind her. With no travois, she had to ride, and he could feel her fighting not to cry out as the movement pulled at her wounds. They rode hard for the next hour, putting distance between themselves and the river. The landscape changed, grass giving way to broken rock and scattered pines. Eagle shadows passed overhead, and somewhere in the distance, wolves howled. Finally, when his horse began to stumble with exhaustion, Chaska guided them into a sheltered grove of aspens. A small spring bubbled from the rocks, and the trees would hide them from distant eyes. Clara half fell from the horse, her legs refusing to support her. Chaska caught her, lowering her gently to the ground. Her dress, already ruined from the whipping, now hung in tatters. He could see her wounds had reopened, blood seeping through wet fabric. "We need fire," he said, already gathering wood. "You'll die of cold otherwise. Won't the smoke? They're hours behind now. The river bought us time." He worked quickly, using his flint to spark a flame. "And if you die of exposure, their tracking won't matter," as warmth began to fill their small shelter. Chaska turned his attention to Clara's injuries. Without his medicine bag, he had to improvise. Pine pitch for the worst wounds, willow bark tea for pain, moss for bandages. Clara bore it all with gritted teeth, occasionally squeezing his hand when the pain grew too intense. "Talk to me," she requested as he worked. "Tell me something, anything, just not about pain or pursuit or—" "My mother used to tell a story," Chaska began, understanding her need for distraction, about why the roses have thorns. As he tended her wounds, he wove the tale. How roses were once the most beautiful but defenseless of flowers. How they begged the Creator for protection. How they were given thorns to defend their beauty, but at the cost of never being carelessly handled again. "So even beautiful things must be dangerous?" Clara asked when he finished. "Or perhaps dangerous things can still be beautiful." Their eyes met, And something passed between them, understanding deeper than words. Clara reached out, her fingers brushing a scar on his forearm. "How did you get this?" "Cavalry saber, the day they burned our winter camp." She traced the mark gently. "And this one?" "Grizzly bear. I was young and foolish. Thought I could steal her cubs." "Despite everything?" Clara laughed, a real laugh, not bitter or forced. "Did you learn your lesson?" "I learned that some things are worth the scars they leave." He caught her hand, stilling its exploration. "Rest now. We have a few hours before we must move again." But Clara's eyes remained open, studying him with that direct gaze he'd come to expect. "Why did you really save me, Chaska? The truth this time." He was quiet for a long moment, listening to the fire crackle and the aspens whisper. "Because I've seen too much death, too much cruelty. My sister, my cousins, friends, all gone because someone decided they didn't deserve to live. When I saw you at that post," he paused, searching for words. "I saw every person who ever stood alone against the mob, and I thought, not this time, someone stands with them." Clara's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I'm not worth the risk you're taking. That's not for you to decide." His voice was firm. "Worth isn't measured by what others think. It's measured by what we choose to do, who we choose to be." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the sound of wind in the aspens. Clara dozed, exhausted by pain and flight. Chaska kept watch, noting how the afternoon light caught the red in her hair, how even battered and exhausted. She held herself with inherent dignity. As the sun began its descent toward the western peaks, she woke with a start. "They're coming." Chaska heard it too. Horses, still distant but approaching. He helped Clara stand, noting with approval that she moved better, the rest and warmth having restored some strength. "Can you ride?" he asked. "Do I have a choice?" "There's always a choice. We could stand and fight." Clara looked at him steadily. "With what? You lost your rifle. I can barely stand. And they outnumber us 10-1. Then we run." He lifted her onto the horse, swinging up behind her. "Owl Woman's Valley is close now. If we can reach the canyon lands, we can lose them in the maze of stone." As they rode out from the aspens, Clara leaned back against him, and he felt the trust in that simple gesture. Behind them, shouts echoed across the landscape. Ahead, the land rose toward ancient cliffs carved by wind and time. "Whatever happens," Clara said softly, "I want you to know. You gave me hope when I had none. You showed me kindness when the world showed only cruelty. That means everything." Chaska's arm tightened around her waist. "Save your gratitude for when we're safe." But he understood what she wasn't saying, that neither of them might survive what was coming, that these might be their last hours together. And suddenly, that possibility hurt worse than any wound he'd ever received. The sun painted their shadows long across the ground as they rode toward uncertainty. Two people from different worlds bound by choice and circumstance, carrying each other toward either salvation or doom. Behind them, the past pursued with guns and hatred. Ahead, the future waited in stone and shadow. But for now, in this moment between heartbeats, they were simply two souls refusing to surrender, finding in each other the strength to continue when everything insisted they stop. The canyon lands rose before them like ancient battlements, red rock walls carved by millennia of wind and rain. Chaska guided his exhausted horse between towering spires of sandstone, seeking the hidden paths known only to those who had hunted these lands for generations. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder, not just the white trackers now, but something far more dangerous. "Lakota war cries," Clara said, her voice tight with fear. "Your people?" Chaska's jaw clenched. He recognized the voice leading those cries. His cousin, Red Sky, a hothead who'd been advocating for war since the last treaty was broken. "Not my people anymore, not after this." They rounded a bend and found themselves facing a sight that made Chaska's blood run cold. Ahead, blocking the narrow canyon passage, stood a mixed group of riders, white bounty hunters from Copper Ridge and a band of young Lakota warriors. an unholy alliance born of shared hatred. At their head sat Jake Thornton himself, his face twisted with rage, and beside him, Red Sky, painted for war. "Well, well," Thornton called out. "The savage and his white whore. You've led us quite a chase." Red Sky spat on the ground. "You disgrace our people, cousin, taking up with the enemy, protecting one who would see us all dead." "Look at her," Chaska said, his voice carrying across the canyon. "Look at what they did to her. Is this the justice you ally yourself with, Red Sky? She's white, that's all that matters." Red Sky's eyes were cold. "Just as you being Lakota is all that matters to them. You think saving one of them changes anything?" Clara straightened against Chaska, finding strength from somewhere deep inside. "I never hurt any of you. I never—" "Shut your mouth, woman," Thornton snarled. "You'll answer for those stolen horses one way or another." The circle of riders began to close. Chaska counted quickly. 12 men, all armed. His horse was blown. Clara could barely sit upright, and he had only his knife and the revolver with 3 bullets left. Then the mountain spoke. The crack of a rifle echoed off the canyon walls, and dust kicked up at Thornton's feet. Everyone froze, hands moving to weapons. "That's far enough." The voice came from above, old and raspy but carrying authority. "This is sacred ground. No blood will be spilled here." On the cliff above, a figure emerged. An elderly woman, her gray hair braided with feathers and beads. A Winchester rifle steady in her weathered hands. Owl woman. "Get out of this, old woman," Thornton called. "This ain't your business." Owl woman laughed, a sound like wind through dry leaves. "Everything that happens in these canyons is my business. White man, I've been guardian here since before you were born." Red Sky spoke in Lakota, his tone respectful but firm. "Grandmother, this one has betrayed our people. He must answer." "Must he?" Owl woman switched to Lakota as well. "And you, young warrior, riding with those who would hang you as soon as look at you, who betrays who? They want the same thing we want," Red Sky argued. "Justice." "No." Clara spoke suddenly, her voice carrying surprising strength. "They want blood. There's a difference." All eyes turned to her, despite her exhaustion and pain. Clara sat straighter, meeting their gazes without flinching. "I've lost everything," she continued. "My husband, my home, my dignity. They beat me nearly to death for crimes I didn't commit. And you know what? I wanted revenge. I wanted to hurt them back." She looked at Thornton with undisguised contempt. "But this man, this savage you speak of, showed me another way. He showed me that choosing kindness in the face of cruelty is the greatest courage of all." "Pretty words." Thornton sneered. "Won't save either of you." Thunder rumbled overhead, though the sky had been clear moments before. Dark clouds gathered with unnatural speed, and the wind picked up, whistling through the canyon like a living thing. "The spirits are angry," Owl woman called down. "You bring violence to sacred ground. Leave now, or face their wrath." As if in response, lightning cracked across the sky. The horses danced nervously, and even hardened men looked uneasy. In the high country, weather could kill as easily as bullets. "Don't be fooled by superstition." Thornton rallied his men. "She's just one old woman with a rifle." But Chaska had noticed something the others hadn't: movement in the rocks above. Owl woman wasn't alone. He caught glimpses of other figures, other rifles. The old woman had friends, outcasts like herself who'd found refuge in these hidden places. "You have a choice," Owl woman announced. "Leave now and live. Stay and test the spirits. And me." Hail began to fall, small at first, then larger, pelting down with increasing force. The horses reared and plunged, their riders fighting for control. "This isn't over," Thornton shouted over the rising storm. "You can't hide forever." But his men were already turning their horses, eager to escape the supernatural fury of the storm. Even Red Sky looked shaken, making protective gestures against bad medicine. "You shame our ancestors," Red Sky called to Chaska in Lakota. When this white woman betrays you, and she will, remember that you chose her over your own blood. I chose mercy over vengeance." Chaska replied, "Perhaps that's a choice our ancestors would understand better than you think." The last of the riders disappeared down the canyon, driven by hail that now fell like white fists. As suddenly as it had come, the storm began to pass, leaving only gentle rain in its wake. Owl Woman made her way down from the cliffs, moving with surprising agility for her age. Up close, Clara could see she was a woman of mixed heritage, high cheekbones and bronze skin, but with green eyes that spoke of European ancestry. "So," the old woman said, studying them both, "the hunter who defies his clan and the white woman who survived their justice. The whole territory is talking about you. Will you help us?" Chaska asked simply. Owl Woman's gaze lingered on Clara's face, seeing past the bruises and exhaustion to something deeper. "I help those who help themselves. Can you stand, girl?" Clara tried, stumbling. Chaska caught her, but she pushed herself upright, meeting Owl Woman's eyes steadily. "I can stand. Good. You'll need to—" Owl Woman turned and began walking up a hidden trail. "Come, we have work to do if you're going to survive what's coming." As they followed, Clara whispered to Chaska, "The storm, was that really spirits?" He glanced at the rapidly clearing sky, where a rainbow now arched across the canyon. "Does it matter? We're alive." They climbed slowly, Clara leaning heavily on Chaska. Halfway up, she stumbled, crying out as the movement tore at her wounds. Without hesitation, Chaska lifted her in his arms. "I can walk," she protested weakly. "I know you can," he said, "but you don't have to. Not alone, not anymore." Owl Woman, watching from above, allowed herself a small smile. Perhaps these two understood something that both their peoples had forgotten, that strength could be found in vulnerability, that accepting help was not weakness, that choosing love over hate was the most revolutionary act of all. The hidden valley opened before them like a secret garden, sheltered and green, with a small cabin nestled among aspens. Smoke rose from the chimney, promising warmth and safety. "Welcome to the place between worlds," Owl Woman said, "where neither red law nor white law holds sway. Here, you're just two people who need healing. Everything else—" She waved a weathered hand. "Everything else can wait." As Chaska carried Clara toward the cabin, she rested her head against his shoulder, finally allowing exhaustion to claim her. They had survived the pursuit, faced down their enemies, and found sanctuary. But both knew this was only a respite. The world beyond this valley would not forget or forgive. Yet, for now, with the rain-washed air filling their lungs and the promise of healing ahead, it was enough. They had defied everything, clan, convention, and hatred itself, and in that defiance, they had found something worth any price: hope. The news spread across the territory like wildfire, carried by traders, soldiers, and drifters from campfire to campfire. The Lakota hunter defied his clan to carry her away. In saloons and trading posts, around cavalry fires and tribal councils, the story grew with each telling. Some painted Chaska as a traitor to his people, others as a man bewitched. Clara became everything from a cunning seductress to a helpless victim, depending on who told the tale. In Owl Woman's Valley, the subjects of these stories knew nothing of their growing legend. For 3 days, Clara had fought fever and infection while Chaska never left her side. Now, on the 4th morning, she woke clear-eyed to find him asleep in a chair beside her bed, his hand still holding hers. She studied his face in the gentle morning light, the strong jaw, the lines of worry that hadn't been there days ago, the way his hair fell across his forehead. How strange, she thought, that this man who should have been her enemy had become her salvation. "He hasn't left that chair except when I forced him," Owl Woman said from the doorway, carrying a steaming bowl. "Stubborn as a mountain. That one." Clara carefully extracted her hand, not wanting to wake him. "How long have I been—" "Drifting between this world and the next. 3 days. The infection was bad, but you're strong." The old woman set the bowl on the bedside table. "Drink this. It'll help with the pain." As Clara sipped the bitter tea, Owl Woman examined her back with gentle efficiency. You'll have scars. No helping that. But you'll heal clean. I don't care about scars. Clara said quietly, I'm alive. That's more than I expected. Owl Woman's green eyes were knowing. And what will you do with this life you've been given back? Before Clara could answer, voices arose outside, urgent, angry. Chaska jerked awake instantly, his hand moving to his knife. Peace, Owl Woman said, though her expression was troubled. It's Black Elk, from the tribal council. Through the window, Clara could see an elderly Lakota man dismounting from his horse, his face grave. Two younger warriors flanked him, their expressions hostile as they stared at the cabin. Chaska rose slowly. My uncle. Your uncle who cast you out? Clara asked, alarmed. The same. He squeezed her hand briefly. Stay here. But Clara was already pushing back the blankets. If this is about me, I should… Stay. His voice was firm but gentle. Please, let me handle this. He went outside, and Clara watched from the window as uncle and nephew faced each other. She couldn't understand the rapid Lakota, but the tone was clear: disappointment, anger, ultimatum. Owl Woman translated quietly. Black Elk says the white soldiers are threatening to attack the winter camp unless Chaska returns the woman. They say he kidnapped her, that she's being held against her will. That's a lie. Clara started to rise, but Owl Woman held her back. Listen. Chaska was speaking now, his voice calm but firm. Whatever he said made Black Elk's face darken further. He's telling them you stay of your own choice. Owl Woman murmured. That you're free to leave any time. One of the young warriors spat on the ground, gesturing angrily. Black Elk raised a hand for silence, then spoke at length, his tone becoming almost pleading by the end. The ultimatum, Owl Woman said softly. Return to face tribal justice for bringing danger to the people. Give up the woman, or be forever cast out, no longer Lakota, no longer under their protection, as good as dead to them. Clara's heart clenched. She watched Chaska's shoulders straighten, saw him speak words that made Black Elk step back as if struck. What did he say? He said, Owl Woman's voice was strange. He said he chooses her. He chooses exile. The warriors mounted their horses without another word. Black Elk lingered, sorrow clear on his weathered face. He spoke once more, quietly, then turned and rode away. Chaska stood alone in the morning sun, watching them go. Clara pushed past Owl Woman, ignoring the pain in her back, and went to him. You shouldn't have done that, she said, her voice thick with unshed tears. Your people, your family, are asking me to choose between who I was and who I choose to be. He turned to face her, his dark eyes steady. I made my choice the night I carried you from that post. But… Clara. He caught her hands in his. All my life. I've watched hatred breed more hatred. Violence answered with violence. Both are peoples trapped in a circle of vengeance that consumes everything good. His thumbs traced gentle circles on her palms. You asked me once why I saved you. The truth is, in saving you, I was trying to save something in myself, the part that still believes in a different way. Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. I'm not worth losing everything. You're not losing me anything. You're giving me the chance to be who I truly am, not what others expect me to be. He brushed away her tears. Besides, you would do the same for me. It wasn't a question, and Clara knew he was right. Somewhere between that night in Copperidge and this morning in a hidden valley, their fates had become intertwined in ways neither fully understood. So what now? She asked. Before Chaska could answer, Owl Woman spoke from the doorway. Now you have bigger problems. Look, on the ridge above the valley, riders appeared. You, as cavalry, their blue uniforms dark against the morning sky. They found us, Clara breathed. Not us, Owl Woman corrected grimly. Me. They've been trying to force me out of this valley for years. You've just given them the excuse they needed. Captain Marcus Wheeler sat his horse like a man born to command. his weathered face expressionless as he surveyed the small group before the cabin. Behind him, 20 soldiers waited with the patient readiness of professional killers. "Mrs. Morrison," he called out, "I'm here to rescue you from your captors." Clara stepped forward, acutely aware of her borrowed dress, her still healing wounds, the way Chaska moved protectively closer. "I'm not captive. Captain, I'm here by choice." Wheeler's eyes narrowed. "Ma'am, you've clearly been through an ordeal. These savages have filled your head with lies. Come with us now, and we'll see you safely back to civilization." "The same civilization that nearly beat me to death?" Clara's voice carried surprising strength. "Thank you, but no. I'm afraid I must insist." Wheeler's hand moved to his sidearm. "We have reports of a white woman held against her will. It's my duty to investigate." "Then investigate." Owl Woman said sharply. "Ask your questions and leave. This is treaty land. Soldier, you have no authority here." Wheeler's smile was cold. "Treaties change, old woman, especially when harboring fugitives and kidnapped women." "I told you, I'm not—" Clara began. "Ma'am, with all respect, you're clearly suffering from captivity delusions. It's common when white women are taken by hostiles." Wheeler's tone was patronizing. "Sergeant Miller, prepare to evacuate Mrs. Morrison." "No." Clara moved closer to Chaska. "I won't go with you." The soldiers shifted uneasily. Forcing a white woman would look bad, but orders were orders. Wheeler studied them all with calculating eyes. "Very well. If Mrs. Morrison insists she's here voluntarily, she can prove it by coming to the fort, giving her statement to the territorial judge, and signing an affidavit. Then she's free to go wherever she chooses." It was a trap, and they all knew it. Once at the fort, Clara would never be allowed to leave. She'd be declared mentally incompetent, a victim of savage influence. "She goes nowhere without me," Chaska said, speaking for the first time. Wheeler's expression hardened. "The savage speaks. You're wanted for kidnapping, theft, and assault on white citizens. Surrender now, and you'll get a trial. Resist, and we'll take you anyway." "Captain," Clara said desperately, "this man saved my life. He protected me when my own people—" "Your own people are trying to save you now, ma'am. Don't be ungrateful." Wheeler raised his hand. "Sergeant, prepare to—" The crack of a rifle cut him off. Dust kicked up at his horse's feet, making the animal dance nervously. On the ridges surrounding the valley, figures appeared. Owl Woman's hidden community. Rifles trained on the soldiers. "Ambush!" someone shouted, and the cavalry reached for weapons. "Hold!" Wheeler commanded, his eyes scanning the tactical situation. They were in a bowl, surrounded, exposed, his 20 men against an unknown number in superior positions. Owl Woman smiled grimly. "As I said, Captain, treaty land. Now, I suggest you leave before someone gets hurt." Wheeler's jaw worked furiously. "This isn't over. We'll be back with more men, proper authority, and you." He pointed at Chaska. "Your death warrant's already signed. Every bounty hunter in the territory will be looking for you." "Then I'd better not be found," Chaska replied calmly. The captain wheeled his horse around. "Move out," he barked. As the soldiers retreated, he called back. "You've got one day, Mrs. Morrison. Come to the fort voluntarily, or we'll come for you, and anyone who stands in our way will be treated as hostile." They watched until the cavalry disappeared over the ridge. The hidden defenders melted back into the landscape, but Clara knew they remained watchful. "He means it," Owl Woman said quietly. "They'll return with enough men to take this valley. Then we run." Chaska said, "North to Canada, maybe, or west to California." "Together?" Clara asked, her heart hammering. He took her hand, his touch gentle but sure. "If you'll have me, a man without a people and a woman without a home, perhaps we can build something new." Clara thought of everything she was leaving behind. Not much. In truth, her old life had died in Copper Ridge. This was something else. Something unprecedented and dangerous and absolutely right. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, Owl Woman watched them with ancient eyes. Then you'd better start preparing. You'll need supplies, new clothes, horses, and you'll need to leave tonight. They'll expect you to run north or west. Go south instead. Into the desert. I know people who can help. As the sun climbed toward noon, 3 people who didn't fit anywhere began planning a journey toward the impossible, a future where love mattered more than color, where choosing each other meant choosing hope over history. The news would spread. Becoming legend, the Lakota hunter defied his clan to carry her away. But the truth was simpler and more revolutionary. 2 people chose each other over everything the world said they should be. And sometimes, that's how the world changes. One impossible choice at a time. The southern desert stretched before them like an ocean of gold and red. Waves of sand and stone beneath a sky so blue it hurt to look at. They had been riding for 6 days, following paths known only to smugglers and outlaws. Guided by the map Owl Woman had pressed into Chaska's hands at their parting. There, Chaska pointed to a line of green in the distance. The hidden spring she told us about. Clara shaded her eyes, studying the landscape. The journey had changed her. Her skin was sun-bronzed now, her hands rougher from handling reins and making camp, but it was more than physical changes. The woman who'd been beaten at a post in Copper Ridge was gone, replaced by someone harder and softer at once. Someone who had chosen her path with eyes wide open. They made camp in a grove of cottonwoods beside the spring, the first real shelter they'd had in days. As Chaska tended the horses, Clara gathered wood for their fire, moving carefully but without the constant pain that had marked their first days of flight. "You're back," Chaska said that evening as she sat by the fire. "Is it healing?" She smiled at him over her shoulder. "The scars will always be there, but the pain fades a little more each day." Owl Woman's medicines did their work. He moved behind her, his fingers ghosting over the fabric of her shirt. Even through the cloth, she could feel the warmth of his touch. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Sorry you carry these marks because of the hatred between our peoples." Clara turned to face him, catching his hand in hers. "Don't apologize for scars you didn't cause. Besides," she squeezed his fingers, "some marks are worth bearing. They remind us what we survived, what we overcame." In the dying light, Chaska studied their joined hands. His dark, hers pale, but both calloused from work, both strong from necessity. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing this life? Choosing you," Clara finished. "Never. Do you regret giving up your clan for me?" "I gave up nothing. I gained everything." He pulled her closer, and she went willingly, resting her head against his chest. "Though I wonder sometimes what kind of life I'm offering you. Always running, always hiding." "We're not running," Clara corrected. "We're journeying. There's a difference." She tilted her face up to look at him. "Owl Woman's friends in Mexico will help us. We'll find land, build something. Not hiding, living." The fire crackled between them in the vast desert night. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, and its pack answered. The sound should have been threatening, but Clara found it comforting. Wild things calling to their own, surviving despite everything. "Tell me about this future you see," Chaska said, his arm tightening around her. Clara closed her eyes, picturing it. A small ranch, maybe somewhere between mountains and desert, where no one cares about the color of our skin or the shape of our hearts. We'll raise horses. You know them so well. And I can learn. Maybe we'll help other people like us, people who don't fit in the narrow boxes the world builds. And children? His voice was carefully neutral. Clara's heart skipped. They hadn't spoken of this, though it hung between them like morning mist. "Children who are both and neither," she said softly, "who carry the best of 2 worlds and are enslaved by none. Is that something you want?" Instead of answering with words, Chaska cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It was their first real kiss, not stolen in desperation or fear, but chosen in peace and certainty. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "I want everything," he said against her lips. "Every sunrise, every sunset, every difficult day and peaceful night. I want to grow old watching your hair turn silver and your eyes stay fierce. I want to build something that lasts beyond us." Tears rolled down Clara's cheeks, but she was smiling. "Samuel used to say I was too stubborn to love properly, that I held too much back, kept walls too high. Samuel was wrong," Chaska said firmly. "You love with everything you are. I see it in how you face each day, how you refuse to let bitterness poison your heart despite everything you've endured." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the desert sky. The Milky Way stretched above them like a river of light, and Clara remembered nights in Boston when the stars were hidden by smoke and buildings. How small that life seemed now, how confined. "We should sleep," Chaska said eventually. "Tomorrow we cross into Mexico." But neither moved, unwilling to break the spell of the moment. Finally, Clara spoke, her voice soft but certain. "Chaska, I need you to know something. When those men in Copper Ridge when I was at my lowest, I prayed. Not for rescue, not even for death. I prayed for justice, for the world to make sense again." She turned in his arms to face him fully. "I thought justice would come as vengeance, as those men suffering like they made me suffer. But then you appeared, and I understood. Justice isn't about punishment. It's about balance being restored, and you restored my faith that goodness exists, that choosing love over hate means something." Chaska was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, pulling her up with him. "Come, I want to show you something." He led her away from the fire to where the spring formed a small pool, reflecting the stars. From his pack, he withdrew 2 items, a small leather pouch and an eagle feather. "Among my people, when 2 choose to bind their lives together, there are ceremonies, rituals. I cannot give you those. I have no right to them anymore." He opened the pouch, revealing 2 small brass rings. "But Owl Woman gave me these. They were her parents, a Lakota woman and an Irish trader who loved despite everything." Clara's breath caught. "Chaska." "I know we cannot marry in any church or have any law recognize us." He continued. "But here, under these stars, with the spirits as witness, I would bind my life to yours, if you'll have me." "Yes," Clara said without hesitation. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They exchanged rings by starlight, speaking vows that no priest would sanctify, but that carried the weight of absolute truth. They promised to stand together against whatever came, to build a life that honored both their pasts while creating a new future. When they sealed their union with a kiss, the desert wind rose, carrying the scent of sage and distant rain. It felt like a blessing, like the land itself acknowledging what human laws would not. Later, as they lay entwined beneath the vast sky, Clara traced patterns on Chaska's chest. "What do you think they're saying about us now, in Copper Ridge, in your former camp? Does it matter?" He caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Let them tell their stories. We know the truth. And what's that? That love is the most dangerous rebellion of all. That choosing each other over everything else threatens the very foundations of their world." He smiled in the darkness. "Good." Dawn came too soon, painting the desert in shades of rose and gold. They broke camp efficiently, movements coordinated from days of practice. As Clara swung up onto her horse, riding astride now, having abandoned side saddles along with other conventions, she paused. "Look," she said, pointing back the way they'd come. In the distance, dust clouds suggested pursuit. Whether cavalry, bounty hunters, or both, they couldn't tell. But it didn't matter. They were too far ahead, and the border was close. "Let them come," Chaska said calmly. "They'll find only empty desert and their own hatred." They rode south as the sun climbed. 2 figures small against the immensity of the landscape, but somehow larger for their defiance. Behind them lay a world that had no place for their love. Ahead waited uncertainty, difficulty, and the challenge of building something new. But they rode together, And that made all the difference. Each had saved the other. From death, from despair, from the prison of being only what others expected. In choosing love over law, compassion over convention, they had written their own story. The desert swallowed them, and their legend grew. In saloons and trading posts, around campfires and kitchen tables, people would speak of the Lakota hunter who defied his clan to carry away the beaten woman, and the woman who chose exile over easy salvation. Some would call it tragedy, others, madness. But a few, the dreamers, the rebels, the ones who understood that love recognizes no boundaries, would call it hope. As the sun reached its zenith, Clara and Chaska crested a rise and saw the river that marked the border. On the far side, a new country waited, and beyond that, the life they would build with their own hands and hearts. "Ready?" Chaska asked. Clara smiled, radiant despite the dust and danger. "I've been ready since the night you carried me from that post." Together, they rowed toward the river, toward the future, toward a freedom that no law could grant and no hatred could steal. The past pursued them, but it could not catch what had already transformed into something else entirely. A love that transcended everything the world said was impossible. And in that transcendence, they found the only justice that truly mattered. The triumph of hope over fear, of choosing to build rather than destroy, of two hearts that refused to be anything less than whole. Thank you for listening to this tale from the Wild West, where love defied all boundaries and two souls found freedom in choosing each other. I'd love to hear where you're listening from, whether you're by a cozy fire, on a long drive, or stealing a moment of escape during your day. Please subscribe to Wild West Campfire for more stories of courage, redemption, and the untamed frontier. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Did Clara and Chaska's journey touch your heart as it did mine? Until next time, partners, keep that campfire burning and those wild dreams alive.